I know for a fact that many 1e4 players hate facing the Scandinavian or centre counter defence. Which other move allows black the chance to shape the game at move 1? Of course, for a long time the centre counter languished in obscurity. None of the top players in the world would touch it, and after a few devastating miniatures from Bobby Fischer in the 60s, where black got slaughtered, the opening's fate seemed all but sealed. Then, during the 70s, slowly but surely things changed. Maverick Australian Grandmaster Ian Rogers, no respecter of convention, insisted on 1d5 in his games and achieved very good results. Various strong players observed this trend and new ideas were discovered. Bent Larsen, that great innovator, went over to the Scandinavian almost full time, and after that, the popularity of the opening just took off. Which brings us to today, where 1d5 is at the forefront of chess fashion, and everyone recognises the idea as a sound and thoroughly awkward way of confronting the king's pawn. I'm going to recommend the lines after e takes d5, queen takes d5 here. Black's game is solid, easy to understand, and contains more than a dash of poison. You can learn this opening in an evening and start using it with success. And now it's time to show you how. Now I'd like to take you through the running order of the video, the variations we'll be looking at. Okay, well the key position firstly is e4, d5. And now we'll be looking at various second move choices for white. The first move I'll be considering, not for very long mind you, is e5. This is really a beginner's move. I don't like it, it's not very good, and black can obtain a comfortable game in at least two different ways. We'll then be going on to looking at the move 2 knight c3, which a lot of players play when confronted with the variation for the first time. Not a bad move, black has to be reasonably careful against it. I'll be showing you a very dependable way to play for black. And the final second move I'll be looking at, apart from the obvious e takes d5, is d4, where white immediately throws the game into confusion, going back into the Blackmar Dima gambit, a move which many attacking maniacs favour and you may well have to face. I'll be showing you the Ziegler variation, which is very similar to our main line of the Scandinavian, where black plays with an early c6 and takes the gambit pawn head on. Moving on then to third move alternatives. White doesn't always play knight c3 in this position. Instead, there are two other moves which give black cause for concern. White may play the move 3d4. This is usually played by white when he wants to avoid theory. I'll be showing you that the move 3e5 is actually very good for black in this position and gives at least equal chances. Moving on, we come to the move 3 knight f3. Again, quite rare really in comparison to the move knight c3, but dangerous. I feel that bishop g4 is a good move for black here, and there are other ideas which I'll be showing you a bit later on. Moving on then to knight c3, by far the most common move I should emphasise. Queen to a5, and now what about white's fourth move alternatives to the move d4? Well, there are plenty of them, and we'll be looking at all of them. The first of these is the crazy Mises gambit, pawn to b4. Well, I think if your opponent plays that, you should just laugh at him and take the pawn. And I'll be showing you exactly why white's move gives rise to humour a bit later on. I think it's a ridiculous idea and you should just take that pawn. Secondly, we'll be looking at a very strange move, which was recently played in an open tournament in Spain by Grandmaster Luis Gallego. That's rook b1. I think the idea of that is to get an improved Mises gambit where you don't actually have to sacrifice a pawn at all, but at the same time you embarrass the black queen. Next up, we'll be looking at a move, a very solid move by white, and that's g3 on move 4. Against that, I think black should blunt the long diagonal as quickly as possible with the move c6 and obtain a position very coherently with moving the bishop out on c8 to either f5 or g4. And we'll be finishing up by looking at the traditional moves here. The move Ansel played, that's 4 knight to f3 and came to grief against Julian Hodgson. And there's also bishop to c4, a traditional development for the bishop on f1. Against that, again, black can play knight f6 and c6 quite comfortably. So plenty of alternatives there for white on the fourth move to d4. We'll be looking at each. Moving up the main line then, after 4d4, black can play knight f6. He can also play c6 in this position. That's also an interesting move. White plays knight f3, pawn to c6. And we come to the main line position of the Scandinavian, and white has several sixth move alternatives. The first one I'm going to examine is the move knight e5, which was played in the game Kasparov-Anand. We'll see that black should be able to equalise against that without too many problems. Then I'll be moving on to look at 6 bishop to d2, which is interesting in that it's the recommendation of Grandmaster John Ems in his book Winning with 1e4. Now, this is particularly interesting because I think a lot of players, if they actually work out you're playing the Scandinavian, will go to books like this, look up the recommendation and then come to the board primed to play Ems's move against you. This is a particularly interesting section of the tape because I'll be recommending a move which I think is actually quite good for black, which isn't even mentioned in Em's book. So this might prove a very important string to your bow. Moving on through the 6 move alternatives, we will then come to the natural bishop to d3. That's nothing at all. Black can play bishop f5, as we'll see later on, and obtain immediate equality. And then last up, we come to the main line, the most common idea of all, bishop out to c4. Black plays bishop f5, and battle is joined.